As I've said many times before, um, the Second Amendment in this country, the fight for the Second Amendment, and a lot of our constitutional civil rights and other civil rights are being tested. I've said all along that this test is going to be similar to the cultural challenges that took place in this country in the 50s and the 60s during the rise of the civil rights movement and the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. And keep in mind, Brown versus Board of Education took place in 54. The um, uh, Civil Rights Act was 1964. And if you remember in the movie Selma, they're walking across the Selma Bridge. It took 10 years from the time that the Supreme Court said separate is not equal and struck that doctrine down. That was 1954. But it took 10 years and the use of the National Guard to force certain states and certain locations to comply with that ruling. Now, it was a ruling, it's not a law. So here's the deal with the Supreme Court. And most people in this country, they wouldn't know a Supreme Court if it came up and bit them. They have no idea how our justice system works. They have no idea how the Supreme Court works. Um, they don't know how Congress works, right? They just take sound bites and messages and Twitter things and have dumbed down their thinking to 120 characters or 150 characters in whatever soundbite they hear on their favorite opinion slash news channel. The fact is, in this country, just to redo, we have a separation of powers defined very well in our Constitution. We're the only country in the world that has such a thing. So that's the other thing, right? Forget listening to anybody who's not America. If you're not America, get the fuck out. You have no idea how we work. You're going by how you think we should. You're doing by what our system should do. We could say the same for your country, right? And we do in some cases. In America, the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. It is an independent entity, just like the executive branch, read that as the presidency, and all of the bureaus, all of the 434 some odd bureaus that are the bureaucrats that support that. And by the way, the presidency, that branch, the executive branch, has all the guns, except the ones that you and I own. And that's what makes the anti-gun people so pissed. That's what makes certain people in government, mostly Democrats today, pissed because they can't just have their way with us as citizens. So the Supreme Court then is the one that is ruling. They don't make law. There's no court in the country that makes law. You've heard this term, legislating from the bench. Judges cannot, by law, legislate anything. They cannot make law, right? They cannot say this is the law, right? And make it themselves. What they rule on is what the law is. When a law is contested, the only time the Supreme Court gets involved in anything is if a lawsuit has gone through the processes in the lower courts, which are inferior courts, by the way, by definition in the Constitution. You have the Supreme Court, all other courts are inferior, and those courts can be uh, uh, created or not by Congress. Congress creates the courts below the Supreme Court. Now, people get pissed because they don't get it that once you go to the Supreme Court, that's final, right? But it's final for two reasons. One, remember, they don't make law. There's no Supreme Court justice that makes law, right? Supreme Court tells us what the law is when there is a disagreement about the law. Sometimes those disagreements run years. Brown versus Board of Education may come up. It's been around a long time. The abortion, Dobbs, that they just did. People were incensed that the Supreme Court somehow made up a law or changed the law. No, they didn't. All the Supreme Court did there is say the Supreme Court got it incorrectly, and they can do that because courts will do that. And they said, well, nothing wrong with abortion. That's not our job. It is the state's job to determine. It is the state's job to determine whether or not abortion is correct in that state. Now, there could be other lawsuits that come out of some of these states doing stupid stuff, which is starting to happen. And those will find their way back up to the Supreme Court. It might take a minute, but it's going to get back there. The most important thing, and they just ruled that the drug, the abortion drug, cannot be blocked by the states, and the FDA is okay to do what they did, and that is to make that drug, to not block that drug anywhere. Okay, so that's what that was about, right? And it was about whether or not the FDA could do what they did, and the Supreme Court said 6-3. Yep, FDA got it right. Now, the anti-abortion people were pissed at their people on the Supreme Court because they didn't rule their way. You see how that goes? You don't have a team on the Supreme Court looking out for you. As a matter of fact, the justices in the Supreme Court and their clerks and all those people, which are attorneys, by the way, they could give a rat's ass about how many people picket outside the Supreme Court while they're deliberating, while they're doing what they do. They don't look outside. They don't care. They don't care about feelings. They don't care about anything other than answering the question, in this case that has come before us, what is the law? Now, they'll come back with stuff that says, like the bump stock ban, the Second Amendment stuff, and the bump stock and pistol brace rule. Two different things, both relying on the same issue, and that is whether or not the ATF followed the law. And it turns out the Supreme Court said, no, you didn't. Texas, no, you didn't. Bump stock ban is gone as a pay attention, as a federal issue via the ATF. So the federal government is now out of the bump stock ban business. The federal government is going to be out of a lot of the Second Amendment business, right? And we're starting to see that percolate. But what the Supreme Court also said is, but there are 12, 14 states that say you can't have a bump stock in my state. The Supreme Court says they can do that. We're saying that the federal government, through the ATF, cannot do a national ban the way they did it. Now, if the federal government, in this case, it would be either the executive branch already tried that. They bent their pick, right? First, Trump goes in, bump stock ban, we got to have a bump stock ban, right? Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if this is true or not, because I was mad at Trump for even doing that. But my understanding today, and I was listening to some commentary about why did he do that? Because he was not an anti-gun people in a sense that he wasn't Joe Biden. My understanding, and if any of you have a different input, different understandings about this, please post it, because, I could be wrong. The understanding I have is that there was a great deal of pressure after the Las Vegas shooting. 50 people dead, several gobs of people injured. That doesn't mean they were all shot, because I start reading it. They were not all shot. 500 people were not shot. But there were a lot of injuries, people running into things, running into themselves, whatever. But there were 50 people killed by gunfire. The pressure went to the White House, and it went to Congress, and it went other places. There is no way that if the pressure was to go to Congress and say to Congress, create a law that makes bump stocks illegal. The danger there, and this is my understanding, I could be wrong, the danger there in Congress, House and Senate, that if Trump were to move that idea into Congress, he now loses control totally until it gets to him and he gets to veto it or not. So if he pushed something into Congress, he's done. He has to step back. The understanding was that if he tried to push it through Congress, the danger would be that Congress would rewrite the NFA. It would rewrite the 1934 law and rewrite it in a way, and they could, Congress could do that. They could write the law in a way that banned all semi-automatic rifles and pistols, because the original NFA was going to get rid of pistols as well, handguns. So, out of expediency, Trump went to ATF and said, make something happen. That's my understanding. Could be true, could be not true. I get it, because there is a danger throwing stuff into Congress when you don't have your paper in a pile. So let's come back to the Supreme Court. There are things coming up to the Supreme Court that will have major effect on our Second Amendment rights and other rights. The anti-gun people know they are losing this fight. And they know that it will be years before the mix on the Supreme Court comes even close to giving them the opportunity to either overturn some of the rulings of this court, which could happen if they wanted to do that. Probably be unlikely. But they have years to wait because the court itself is young. And they're talking about having a couple of the liberal justices actually retire early. One's 64 years old, trying to tell her she needs to retire so that Biden can make another appointment. Right? I mean, that's how crazy it gets when they start doing that. People don't understand the Supreme Court. They're there for life. People are saying, and they're trying desperately to tarnish the reputations of some of the Supreme Court justices that are there today. That's the game that everybody plays. It's oppositional research. How much dirt can I find on you? That's been politics. It has not been run against Supreme Court justices until recently, and that's because the Democrats know that if they don't get any Supreme Court picks with Biden, they're not going to get any for 20 years. They are, and without the Supreme Court, with their kind of mix now, with the Democrats' kind of mix of justices, they have no chance of moving a more progressive agenda into or through the country. To me, that's a good thing. But the Supreme Court justices do not make the law. They tell us what the law is and why it is that way. And they're very good at doing that. The problem is American people, one, you think they're going to read a 16-page, which is a short page brief from the Supreme Court? No. They're going to wait for some talking head to tell them what the deal is. So what the deal is this. We are coming close to major cultural friction, like tectonic plates create earthquakes. Just like the civil rights movement. The idea that American citizens have the right to keep and bear arms in their home and in public without restraint, right, is going to come to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is pretty much going to say, what part of, I'm going to paraphrase, right, what part of shall not be infringed don't you guys get? The liberal side of the equation out in the states and in Congress is going to say, you're telling us we can't make laws that affect guns and people with guns because it's a constitutional right, and we can no longer balance what the government thinks is public safety. So it doesn't matter how many children are killed in mass shootings. The right answer is from the Supreme Court? From the Supreme Court? No, it doesn't matter. Because we're not telling you, you cannot say because there's bad things that happen with people who misuse their constitutional right, that the right goes away for everybody. And the Supreme Court is saying that's bullshit. And it's one step at a time that these cases are getting to them. The one that is going to matter is going to be the first assault weapons ban that gets to them. There are already 3, maybe 4 that are kind of in queue. And there are other bans that are out in the states, out in the circuits waiting. That is kind of a complicated way to say there is going to be a block, a national block against assault weapons ban, and that's going to come from the Supreme Court, right? It's going to have the same effect as the bump stock ban. It's going to have the same effect as the pistol brace ruling, right? The anti-gun people are being forced into a funnel where the only thing they can do is to try to destroy the gun industry. Who are they? The people that make ammo, the people that make guns, the people that make gun parts. And then the fourth one is people who process their money, or the banks. But those cases, some of those cases aren't even getting heard. They're getting thrown out, which they should. So you're getting at? So we have this thing going on in this argument about the role of the Supreme Court. And the fact is that if you do stupid stuff, that's where stupid stuff stops, at the Supreme Court. The liberal stupid stuff has been stopped. Conservative/Republican stupid stuff has been stopped. So everybody's mad at the Supreme Court. Just leave them alone. Let them do their job, because they're doing, in my opinion, they're doing a great job. They're doing a great job, right? A couple of things I don't like, but you can't have everything. And this is a misconception from the American people and a lot in politics. Just because the Senate ratifies someone who is conservative or has been nominated by a Republican, does not mean that all Republican agendas are going to win, and it doesn't mean all liberal agendas are going to lose. It just means at that point in time, based on the information, the Senate is saying, we affirm this pick by the president. We affirm that. And that's for life, and that's just the way it is. Right? I mean, that's just the way it is. I think we've had a unanimous decision on the abortion pill. Unanimous. 9-0. The right-wing anti-abortion people lost their minds. Lost their minds. The same way the anti-gun people lost their minds when the bump stock ruling came down. I mean, you had people from Las Vegas, in that saying, well, what about me? I was shot and wounded in Las Vegas. And the Supreme Court basically said, I don't give a fuck. We're not ruling on whether you got hurt. We're ruling on whether or not a bump stock is a machine gun? And the answer is no, it's not. Now, if Congress wants it to be a machine gun, Congress has to do their job, write a law, because we don't do law. We tell you what the law is, but we don't do law. So tell Congress, y'all, you anti-gun people want this thing to happen. You go to Congress, you have them do a law. Oh, you can't get it done through Congress. Well, sucks to be you. That means that other things are more important. Go suck your thumb over there. That's kind of, the Supreme Court talk. I'm just kidding. Between now and November, it's going to be interesting. Actually, this is June. So this month is going to be major decisions by the Supreme Court. Several of them. They still have 15 or some things to announce, but it's going to be interesting. And it's going to send a message. What I want to see is they say to Hawaii, the Hawaii Supreme Court, you take your aloha and shove it up your ass. Because aloha doesn't trump a constitutional right. So you need to get over it, right? And these things that some states are doing and sheriffs are doing to make it difficult and more difficult for people to become armed citizens, those little things, one, they're trifling, but they're going to end up in a lawsuit. And then those will become national prohibitions against the anti-gun people. And I think they sense that coming. I think they need to find out how to relook at the data. And if they want to save people from guns and they want to save innocent people in public from guns, then they need to go after all the little look at where a birthday party, somebody didn't get invited, or they tried to get in and somebody wouldn't let them in. They killed a bouncer. Security put them out. They got mad. They went back to the car, truck, whatever, got their gun, came in and started shooting people from outside because they were mad because they couldn't come, they wouldn't let them come in and play, right? Or they're at the strip club or at the club or wherever, someplace where people drink and party, and they're black people drinking and partying. I would outlaw any block party that doesn't have a license and has armed support around it. Oh, you want 500 people in? Tell me where you're going to get the 20 armed guards that you're going to pay for. See what I'm getting at? Right? The people that are doing most of this, we all know who they are. They're the same frequent flyers in the criminal system. I didn't say justice system, in the criminal system, and they know they're going to come out and they keep doing what they're doing. Or culturally for them, I'm going to come back, right? Take Chicago, South Side, West Side, two of the most dangerous places in and around Cook County. Why? Because that's where all the bad black folks are. All the gangbangers hang out there, and they shoot each other on the daily. Does anybody give a shit? No. Do they count those as bad shootings that they need to stop? No. Because whatever. Now, something like that might get to the Supreme Court. Who knows? Or Congress might write laws saying whatever. In the meantime, we know who the bad guys are. I think we're going to see more of them fail the room temperature test. I think we're going to find more of them being killed by armed civilians like you and I, as they should. I don't care how old they are. You're 12 years old and you're going to point something that looks like a gun at me, you're not going to go home today. You're going to die right there. But you're just a kid. That's not my problem. I don't care how old you are. You're 6 years old, you got a gun, you're going to point it at me? If I can't drop kick you fast enough, then I'm going to shoot you. It's not my job. I'm not your daddy. I'm not your mom. It's not my job to coach you, counsel you, de-escalate anything. Not my job. My job is to protect myself and my loved ones. If you're in the way, you're going to mess that up. Sucks to be you. Right? But to come back to Supreme Court. This month, in June, is going to be huge. The left media and the right media are just frothing at the mouth, hammering away at why the Supreme Court is bad. Each side is trying to do that. It is about power when it comes to the presidency. Now, I like the judges that Trump, when he was president, selected. Those three. As far as I'm concerned, that's the only way we're making any kind of progress for our Second Amendment rights, is because he did that. Now, whether he was thoughtful about it, I don't know. I didn't have dinner with him that night, But the result was three good justices that think through things. Not like this, I forget her name, man. This chick on the bump stock ban, she come in her dissent. She wrote her dissent. She goes, well, if it walks like a duck, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. My response to that is, obviously, you need to go back to grammar school and figure out what a fucking duck is. Because you can go and create something out of wood, and it will do that. So you're just saying it doesn't fit what you want. And you're a Supreme Court justice? Man, that was a dumb comment to make. And it showed how childish people can get when they're emotionally charged with these kind of things. And that was a Supreme Court justice. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, looks like a duck, it's a duck. Then therefore, looks like a machine gun to me. And then my thing is, bitch, you didn't read the fucking law. You didn't read the law. Or if you did, you got major mad because you knew you were wrong. So you had to write something. So you wrote that stupid stuff. Well, you still lost. Yeah, I didn't mean this to be a rant. I must have too much stuff in my head. But listen, I know this was long. I didn't have any notes, but this whole Supreme Court thing and how we're doing with Second Amendment has really got me energized. So if you like the content of this station, of this channel, subscribe if you haven't already. Why do I ask? Because I have been stuck at the same number of subscribers for a year. Not a single increase in subscribers, and I have no idea why. I haven't been banned or any other bad stuff that YouTube does, to my knowledge. So if you're watching, subscribe, hit the bell icon. That'll help. And as always, wherever you can, whenever you can, however you can, carry on.